Hello! I'm very sorry for not posting a new video in a while. There was a mix-up in the mail when I ordered this custom piece. I wanted to be able to complete the whole thing on camera while I talk about Diana the Musical, the 2021 professionally recorded Netflix production. For those unfamiliar, this musical tells the story of Princess Diana of Wales with a few creative liberties taken for the sake of musical theater. However, from what I've seen, Diana is often either ignored or outright despised, not just by theater fans, but also by history buffs who know, well, anything about Diana's life and legacy. Now, I won't pretend this musical is perfect. Even many of its defenders categorize it as a fun show, but not a good one. And honestly, I get it. There are definitely moments where it stumbles in portraying such an impactful historical figure, but at the same time, where it falters as a biographical piece, I believe it succeeds as a musical. And not just any musical, but one that I genuinely enjoyed. So for this video, I want to share my perspective. Let me be upfront. I am not a historian, nor do I have deep insights into how musicals are made and written. But what I am is a fan of musicals. I love them. I always have, and as I've said in previous videos, I can find something to enjoy in almost any show. Diana is no exception. My goal here isn't to change anyone's mind, but rather to explain why I like this musical and why I think it deserves at least a little credit. This is a complete and total opinion piece. I understand that my reasons for liking this musical will not translate to everyone, and there may be some rightful criticism that I look over, but this is for my own fun. I just want to share my thoughts on a musical I really, really like. That said, I won't be dissecting every song, and I'm only focusing on Act 1. When I first planned this, I was going to do the whole thing, but then I got 2 songs into Act 2 and got incredibly burned out and decided, screw it, we're just doing Act 1. I like making these videos because they're fun, not because I want to impress people or change their minds. So because I like talking about stuff I like, I'll focus on what made this show work for me. One last note, I'll be discussing Diana the Musical through the lens of fiction. While I recognize that these characters are based on real people, some of whom are still alive, I went into this musical without much historical context. With that in mind, I believe the best way to approach it is as a work of theatrical storytelling. I hope you understand, and with that, let's dive in. Underestimated. Diana's opening number, Underestimated, takes a different approach from the traditional grand ensemble openers seen in many musicals. Instead of a full cast number that establishes the world and its context, we get a solo power ballad, entirely focused on Diana. And honestly, I think this choice works in the musical's favor. Unlike other historical musicals that might require extensive world building, Diana benefits from the fact that its setting is already familiar to most audiences. While an ensemble number could have provided a clearer historical backdrop, Underestimated instead zeroes in on its protagonist, grounding us in the perspective of a 19-year-old girl about to be thrust into the overwhelming world of royalty. From the start, we see that Lady Diana Spencer is both wary and hopeful, qualities that set up what the musical presents as her defining flaw, her supposed naivete. This belief that love and fairy tales can coexist in her new royal life drives much of her arc. Throughout the show, she clings to the idea that Charles will eventually love her and her alone, even as reality repeatedly challenges that hope. Underestimated establishes the entire emotional trajectory, introducing the theme of Diana's innocence and her belief that, quote, princes never lie, as the foundation of her journey. One of my favorite aspects of this musical is how naturally Diana's character evolves over time. The girl we meet in Underestimated transitions seamlessly into the girl from Simply Breathe, who then develops into the girl from Pretty Pretty Girl, and so on. Each step in her journey feels like a logical and believable progression, and it all begins here, with the young woman who hasn't yet realized just how much she's about to change. The Worst Job in England. This song introduces the 2 of the story's central figures, Prince Charles and Queen Elizabeth. One of Diana the Musical's strengths is its relatively small core cast. While plenty of historical figures orbit the story, the only truly central characters are Diana, Charles, Camilla, the Queen, and arguably James Hewitt, who doesn't even appear until Act 2. Even the ensemble members are cast as various figures adjacent to the story. The Worst Job in England establishes how both Charles and the Queen perceive Diana, and these perspectives tie directly into the show's underlying themes and narrative structure. Charles' perspective. From the start, Charles approaches his search for a bride with detachment, treating it like he's picking out a doll rather than choosing a life partner. This attitude sets the tone for how he treats Diana in their early years. She's not a queen to his king, but a necessary fixture, a tool for royal publicity, someone to help restore public trust in the monarchy. The show makes it clear that Charles has cycled through potential wives like tissues, searching for the perfect princess, one who is, as he himself puts it, shy, discreet, and pretty. Interestingly, the song does suggest that Charles recognizes Diana as a person with hopes and dreams of her own. He even acknowledges that she might not want to be queen, implying that he isn't trying to force her into marriage. But how much that really matters in the grand scheme of things is another question, one I'll circle back to later. Meanwhile, the Queen. Now, this might be an unusual take, but The Worst Job in England subtly sets up Queen Elizabeth as a non-antagonistic foil to Diana. Let me explain. The Queen's first appearance is grand and regal, complete with fanfare, reinforcing her image as the ultimate symbol of tradition, honor, and nobility. She is the perfect queen. And, at least in theory, Diana is meant to follow in her footsteps. That's the obvious connection between them. But the show presents another, more interesting similarity. The Queen is just as naive as Diana. When Charles points out that Diana might not want to be queen, the Queen's immediate reaction is to list all the benefits of royalty. Why, of course, any young girl would dream of holding such a position. She fully believes that Diana will embrace her role as princess, queen, and the heart of Britain. What she fails to see is that Diana doesn't understand royal traditions, and rather than seamlessly adapting, she will go on to disrupt and challenge them. This shared naivete is what makes the Queen a foil to Diana. Both begin the story with an idealized version of how things should be, but when reality turns out differently, they respond in opposite ways. Diana, realizing she's trapped in a life she never fully understood, reacts with rebellion and chaos, fighting desperately to escape her situation. The Queen, on the other hand, responds by enduring, accepting the hand she's been dealt, maintaining the status quo, and making the best out of it. Even later in the musical, when it's painfully clear that Diana and Charles's marriage is beyond repair, the Queen continues to urge Charles to fix things, as if the traditional solutions will still work. By setting up this contrast early on, The Worst Job in England not only establishes Charles' attitude towards Diana, but also foreshadows one of the key thematic conflicts, the clash between Diana's disruptive force and the royal family's unwavering adherence to tradition. Snap click. Since Diana the musical is told from Diana's perspective, everything unfolds through her perception of reality. Snap click is the audience's first introduction to the general press, which plays a crucial role in the story. Given that Diana's relationship with the media was instrumental in shaping her legacy, it makes sense that the press serves as a major driving force in the plot. I think this number does a fantastic job of portraying the press through Diana's eyes. At this point in the show, she's still the naive and shy young woman we met at the beginning, suddenly thrown into the relentless media spotlight. Qualities that were once seen as endearing or positive are now twisted against her. She teaches kindergarten? Then she must be stupid. She's remarkably pretty? Well, she probably won't last long anyway. But at least she's a virgin, so that counts for something. And the moment Diana dares to stand up for herself and tells them to leave her alone, they immediately turn on her, calling her a bitch, only to flip back in the next breath, professing their love for her. In this scene, the press is ruthless, menacing, almost a villain in its own right. In fact, at least for this song, I'd argue that the press is set up as the main villain in Diana's story. But what makes this interesting is how the show later flips that dynamic entirely through Diana's perspective. At first, she sees the press as an uncontrollable, intrusive force that degrades and belittles her. However, over time, she comes to understand how they operate. More importantly, she learns not just to live with their presence, but to use it, leveraging the media to gain the public's love, something she never truly had in her marriage. I may be getting ahead of myself, but the way that press is introduced in Snap Clicks as an anxiety-inducing, almost predatory entity, establishes a clear contrast for Diana's growth. When we see her later in the musical, fully aware of how to manipulate the press to her advantage, we can look back at this moment and recognize just how much she's evolved. In Snap Click, the press believes they control Diana's story, but by the end of the show, it's Diana who takes control of her own narrative, and that's such a powerful transformation to witness. Whatever Love Means Anyway. In Whatever Love Means Anyway, the audience is witness to the largest turning point in Diana's life, Charles's proposal to her. Since this song encapsulates a large portion of the plot with the perspective of many characters, there's quite a bit to speak about, so bear with me. The song begins with Charles asking his mother for advice. "Were you certain when you married?" he asks. Obviously, the fact that Charles isn't certain about proposing to Diana is clear, but allow me to speak about the Queen's opening verse. The Queen speaks of how she was quite certain when Prince Philip proposed to her, how he did it properly. Once again, the theme of tradition comes into play with the proper way to propose, and how, even though their love has evolved throughout the years, it remains steadfast and true for them. This is the core of the Queen's naivete, as I mentioned earlier. Because, despite being royalty, she still managed to find real love with someone who remained faithful to her from the beginning. This is why the Queen continuously tells Charles to fix things with Diana when things go sideways. It's not just her sense of tradition, but her understanding of whatever love means anyway. To her, love is ever changing, but always there. What she doesn't seem to understand is that Charles doesn't love Diana at all. He might be fond of her, as he says at this point, but he doesn't love her the way a man should love a woman he plans to propose to. And then the proposal. Charles approaches Diana with the intent to propose, but one last time he asks if she truly wants the royal life. There's some dialogue in this scene that's not on the soundtrack where Diana explains that because her mother abandoned the family, she started dreaming of a real fairy tale, and if not that, then, quote, just the possibility of one. I believe what Diana is trying to say in this scene is not just that she wants to be loved by her partner, a fact which Charles conveniently seems to gloss over even during the proposal, but I'll get to that in just a second. But what she really wants is for the man she marries to believe in her ideals that love can overcome the obstacles marriage might bring. In this moment, after Diana has explained what she wants from the arrangement, that being in blanket terms to be loved genuinely, Charles doesn't actually seem to register that Diana might not be compatible with him. At this point, he should have realized that Diana didn't want the throne, she didn't want the publicity, she wanted him, because she was young and in love, and yes, even a bit naive. But at this point, Charles doesn't see that yet. It's my belief that, in this moment, the proposal, he's more concerned with moving the process along. However, it's not done in a dismissive or cruel way, as he genuinely misunderstands Diana's perspective here, and he honestly thinks that he's giving her what she wants, a fairy tale. He speaks of their future together by describing her as the loveliest queen, once again reducing Diana to a pretty face, albeit unintentionally, and speaking of how their fairy tale will captivate the nation, because that's what Charles is more concerned with, pleasing the nation. Even if he believes he's giving Diana the fairy tale she wants, he fails to understand that to Diana, the fantasy isn't becoming queen or marrying a prince, it's marrying someone she loves, and Charles doesn't know that. And, now that she finally has a bit of a solo, it's time to bring up Camilla. I'll be honest, Camilla's characterization is probably the weakest part of the musical. She's set up as a more traditional antagonistic rival to Diana. While she does have a degree of character depth, she has no sense of character progression through the musical. She remains much the same throughout the show, constantly seeing Diana as simple-minded, even in the beginning. In one of the very first scenes, before their feud even begins, Camilla's impression of Diana is that she's simple, naive, and, as she states herself, malleable. In this number, she once again dismisses Diana as simple-minded, telling Charles to come to her whenever he gets bored of Diana. She outwardly admits that she and Charles will have great influence over her, as if Diana is nothing but a puppet or a porcelain doll. Hell, they outwardly state this comparison. Camilla picked out the necklace for Diana that she wears in This Is How Your People Dance. Charles suggests she wear it for their date, which he brings Camilla to, and Diana states very clearly that she feels like an overdressed Barbie doll. That's a direct quote. Of course she does. Camilla and Charles quite literally dressed her up for that scene. This mindset that Diana is simple-minded and naive, though it gradually changes from amusement to frustration, remains steadfast through the whole show. Only in one moment does she show any degree of doubting the affair she's having with Charles, and once they get back together again, she flips on a dime, becoming one of the main antagonists along with Charles. But she also introduces one of my favorite motifs. You do your duty for your country and your honor. Charles and Camilla might be in love, but they are just as tightly bound by tradition as Diana finds herself. The only difference is that they have no desire to escape the crushing weight of tradition, while Diana fights it. Camilla is actually content being the mistress, forever the other woman, because she knows that the people will love Diana more. In resigning herself to the role of In resigning herself to the role of mistress, she, and by extension Charles, think they can have their cake and eat it too, have the perfect princess in Diana while also having a real relationship with each other. Though this resolve is tested multiple times, mostly by Diana, further proving that she's not as simple-minded as they think, when Charles and Camilla meet at the wedding, they're the ones who repeat the Queen's message about love. It's crystal clear that the only real love story in the musical is theirs, even if Diana is the protagonist. I do not envy the job the writers were given for this. Taking Camilla, who was, at least at the time, decimated by the press for being the other woman, and making her into an at least understandable character. I'd say they succeeded in that at the very least. Some of her moments with Charles do appear to show their genuine, unbreakable love, and while I believe that's what the show is going for, it does fail in regards to just how antagonistic Charles and Camilla act towards Diana. I Will. I might be biased because I love power ballads, but I Will, the song Diana sings at the wedding, is my personal favorite. It ended up on my Spotify Wrapped, along with one other song from this musical that I'll get to later. I Will is a sort of out-of-body experience for a Diana who is quite naturally having serious doubts about the marriage, finally realizing that Charles is in a relationship with Camilla. The song is about Diana pushing aside her very reasonable doubts and pledging to be the best princess she can be. There's two sides to this scene. One that develops the theme of tradition and how to operate it, and one that develops Diana's character growth. Firstly, the theme of tradition. The entire song is Diana accepting the heavy weight of the crown and pledging loyalty to her new royal life, as well as the traditions that come with it. She knows here that there is no going back, even if she wants to. Diana accepts the rules and traditions set up for her, and she promises herself that she will do everything in her power to represent the crown, as the Queen and Charles intend her to. She says she will make the people love her, but it doesn't come across as a decree that the people will have to love her simply because she is now royal. No, what she's saying here is that she will make herself into such a genuine and respectable person that the people will love her not for being royalty, but for being her. Even the line, "I'll be better than before," spells this out. She wants to be everything the crown wants her to be. Perfect and loved by the people. When Diana says "I will" in marrying Charles, she's not just saying "I will" to him, she's saying it to the heavy burden she's about to take on and promising to be the best version of herself that she can be. The other side that we need to look at is the continuing theme of naivete and how this moment sets Diana's underlying goal for most of the musical. One of Diana's other lines is "I will make him love me," that being Charles. She already knows that he's in love with Camilla, that he's being unfaithful to her, and they're not even married yet, but she honestly believes that if she does everything right, acts the perfect princess, and bears the children he wants, he'll love her in return. In this moment, she's agreeing to a life with him, believing that if she works hard enough, he will eventually come to love her. What Diana doesn't realize here is that, from the beginning, Charles never really saw her as an equal. Even when Diana was doing everything exactly as he wanted, that she was still less to him than Camilla, because he loves Camilla, but at best, he only respects Diana, and that doesn't last long. Diana's belief that she can make Charles love her fuels most of the plot throughout the story, and "I Will" serves as the moment she sets that impossible wish into action. And also, the wedding dress quick change is so good. The world fell in love. At this point in the musical, Diana is doing everything she can to adhere to royal tradition, carefully following Charles and the Queen's expectations. Yet, an interesting visual detail reinforces her position within the monarchy. Her costume here closely resembles what the ensemble wears when portraying the servants. Whether intentional or not, this choice subtly underscores her subservience to tradition and the rigid expectations placed upon her. Diana may be a princess, but in many ways she is still treated as just another cog in the royal machine. During her first major public appearance, Diana tries to present herself exactly as she believes she should, poised, proper, and perfectly in line with royal decorum. However, no matter how much she attempts to fit the mold, she can't help but be herself, a young woman filled with nerves and uncertainty. Ironically, this raw authenticity is exactly what captivates the crowd. They don't fall in love with her because she embodies royal tradition. They adore her because she offers something new. Unlike the polished and rehearsed members of the royal family, Diana is refreshingly real. Charles, however, does not share the public's enthusiasm. When Diana first begins engaging with the crowd, his discomfort is clear. Disapproval flickers across his face, bordering on embarrassment. She hasn't outright defied tradition, but she is bending it in ways that he did not anticipate. The only reason he holds back from chastising her is that, to his frustration, her warmth and spontaneity work far better than his carefully controlled approach. This contrast is further emphasized when Charles addresses the crowd. His speech is flawless, rehearsed, traditional, and exactly what is expected from a future king. The audience politely acknowledges it, but their true focus remains on Diana. This moment serves as a direct callback to the worst job in England, when the Queen laments that our popularity is declining, the public trusts us less and less. Now we see why. The people are growing weary of the rigid prestige of the royal family. They no longer crave tradition for tradition's sake. Instead, they are drawn to someone who feels like one of them, kind, humble, and approachable. Diana represents what they've been longing for. Despite getting exactly what he wanted, a wife beloved by the public, Charles is anything but pleased. He resents that Diana is the one commanding attention. Though he may not consciously recognize it, he has always viewed himself as the most important person in the room. From the start, he never considered Diana his equal. He expected her to be a quiet princess, beautiful, dutiful, and ultimately secondary to him. Instead, she takes center stage, shifting the power dynamic in a way he cannot control. The world may have fallen in love with Diana, but for Charles, that adoration feels like a threat. Happiness, simply breathe. Happiness. This moment in Diana the Musical is one of the most emotionally charged, and it's the only real duet Charles and Diana share. That alone tells you something. It shows that, despite everything else, the one thing they truly had in common was their love for their children. Even as Charles grows more antagonistic towards Diana later in the show, that love remains the one thing they could ever agree on. At this point, Diana has everything she thought she wanted. A husband, a family, and the perfect fairy tale life. But for once, she's the one who feels content while Charles is left wanting, because deep down, his heart still belongs to Camilla. And the way the show makes that clear is subtle but brutal. When Camilla calls, Charles doesn't say he loves Diana. He doesn't even pretend to. The best he can manage is that they're getting along better than ever. And honestly, that's the kindest thing he ever says about their marriage for the rest of the show. That one line tells you everything. This marriage was never about love for him. Whether he thought he loved Diana at one point or whether he was just trying to make the best of the situation after Camilla left, it doesn't really matter. Because even in their happiest moment, the thing he actually loved was the fact that Diana had done exactly as expected. She was fulfilling her duty. Hell, when she's pregnant, he even tells her to make the first one a boy. It's a joke, sure, but it also tells us exactly how he sees her. Diana isn't his wife. She's a role to be filled. And the saddest part, she responds with, "I will do my very best." Even though she logically has no control over it, she wants so badly to make him happy, because she loves him. And she has no idea that he simply can't love her back, even when their marriage is at its strongest. And then comes the gut punch. Charles takes Camilla's call, and even though he just admitted to Diana that things were going well between them, he immediately turns around and professes his love for another woman. And Diana hears him. This is the breaking point. Diana tries to confront him about it, but Charles doesn't take responsibility. Instead, he just brushes her off. "You misunderstood. It was just a phone call. I'd rather not have this conversation again and again." As if it's her fault for even bringing it up. And this is where Simply Breathe takes over, showing Diana at her most vulnerable. This is the moment where her postpartum depression and suicidal thoughts consume her. The show doesn't sugarcoat it. Diana is drowning. And the worst part, even when the doctor tells her she needs love and support, even when they specifically say that Charles should be there for her, Sarah, her sister and closest ally throughout the show, already knows he won't be. When Harry is born, Charles barely even tries. Instead of celebrating, he makes a joke, another dig at Diana's expense, and when she brings up Camilla, he is the one who snaps. He yells at her, he blames her, as if she's the reason he can't stay faithful. Think about that. Diana is at her lowest point, suffering, desperate, pleading for something, anything from him, and he throws it all back in her face. From the very beginning, all she wanted was a fairy tale. A loving husband, a happy family, but now the illusion is shattered. This moment is the first real crack in Diana's naivete. She finally realizes, that Charles isn't her Prince Charming. This isn't the fairy tale she dreamed of. She didn't marry into a love story. She married into a battlefield. But that doesn't mean she stops fighting. No. Instead, she fights harder, further railing against tradition in the next big number. She moves in the most modern ways. She moves in the most modern ways is the moment where Diana actively begins to challenge the rigid traditions of the royal family, specifically how they engage with the public. The Queen opens the song by emphasizing the importance of maintaining a distance, warning that there's danger when one shares. While Diana hasn't revealed any deep secrets, yet, the Queen already sees her as a risk, walking a dangerous tightrope between royal duty and personal authenticity. But, despite this so-called danger, Diana's approach is undeniably effective. Camilla and Sarah step in to acknowledge what everyone can see. The people love her. She's treating them as equals, as individuals worthy of her time and attention, and in return, they adore her. It's as if she can do no wrong. And yet, the Queen, Charles, and Camilla remain deeply disapproving, clinging to their belief that tradition is the only correct path. This sets up an interesting contradiction. Diana is defying those traditions, yet she is more beloved than any of them. Charles, in particular, struggles to articulate exactly why her methods are so wrong. He insists that the royals are symbols meant to represent the public's aspirations. But when Diana pushes back, he accuses her of coming across as common, as if that alone is enough to dismiss her. But to Diana, that's not an insult. It's a revelation. She understands something Charles never could, that people don't want distant figures of prestige, they want someone real, someone who sees them, respects them, and meets them at their level. This is what separates Diana from the rest of the royal family. Charles, Camilla, and the Queen all hold themselves above the general public, though for different reasons. Charles believes his status alone makes him superior, while Camilla's sense of superiority is more personal. While she doesn't place herself above the entire public, she certainly sees herself as above Diana. The Queen, meanwhile, justifies her detachment as a necessity. She believes a monarch must remain above the people in order to rule effectively. But Diana? She breaks every rule by placing herself beside them. At this stage, Diana isn't outright rejecting the monarchy. She's still trying to make it work. If she can earn the love of the public, maybe Charles will finally see her as she truly is, kind, capable, and worthy of respect. But Charles is too bound by tradition to recognize what Diana already understands, that love, not status, is what makes a leader beloved, and that is why the people choose her. Diana, the Rage. There are very few songs in Diana that don't feature Diana at all. In fact, despite being the closest thing the story has to a male lead, this is Charles' only solo number. I think that keeping the perspective on Diana really works, as it means most of the story is told through her perception. While also being Charles' big solo number, it's also the closest thing the musical has to a villain song. Here, Charles is, for the first time, outwardly antagonistic to Diana. There's a reason that this song is called The Rage. It's Charles at his most emotional, which is a far cry from his more detached attitude towards Diana through the rest of the musical. He may be angry with her most of the time, but this is the only point where he yells at her. He calls her a tart. He accuses her of being stupid, just like the press originally did. He's reinforcing all the terrible things the press originally said about her. This is a great time to call back to what I said about the press being set up as the villain at first. They said all these horrible things, that she was stupid, that she was nothing but a pretty face. And now, as the press begins to change their perception of her, Charles begins to echo the same things they said. Charles, who was originally set up to be Diana's Prince Charming, who explicitly stated that he would protect her from the press, is now echoing the same things that they said, taking the role of the villain himself. In a way, Charles is finally being honest with Diana, letting his true feelings for her show, but it's not what Diana wanted at all. When Diana brings up Camilla again, he dismisses it, turning back to protocol, once again falling back on tradition to explain his actions. But he's not even really explaining anything. He's dismissing Diana's very valid concerns and emotions in order to make her believe that she is ruining everything, when in reality, her dance at the Royal Ballet only made the press love her even more. Though he accuses her of doing it solely for the press, Diana outwardly states that she did it for him. But of course, he ignores that. He doesn't say how she can make him proud of her, because he never will be. As long as she's his wife, he can never be with the woman he really loves. Then there's the final gut punch, Charles's line. When any fool can see your life's greatest achievement, you married me. This is the line that truly makes Charles the villain of the story. While in history, there's almost never a real villain in the situation, if we look at this moment through the lens of fiction, this is one of the most cruel things a villain can say. Diana has spent the musical proving to herself and the world that she's more than a stupid pretty face, and Charles has completely disregarded all the good she's done. The charities, the goodwill, the love of the people. He hates her for it, because it's not protocol, because he's not the one that the people love so much, because Diana won't sit down and be quiet like she's supposed to. Every worthwhile thing Diana has done, all of it in service of making Charles respect her, means nothing to him, because in his mind, her worth as a person is tied to her ability to make him look good. As I Love You. This is another heartbreaking turning point for Diana. As I Love You follows immediately after Diana, the Rage, with no dialogue in between, making it hit even harder. The last time we saw Diana, she was being berated by Charles, who, for the first time, wasn't just dismissive or cold, he was outright cruel. And while she pushed back slightly in the moment, mentioning Camilla, she never truly fought back. She just wanted him to calm down. But after he's done yelling, she doesn't scream back. She doesn't even try to argue. Instead, she does something we haven't seen from her before. She makes herself completely vulnerable. Up until now, whether Diana was following tradition or bending it, she always handled Charles's jabs with grace. She let them roll off her, kept going, tried to work within the system. But this time, she doesn't just let it go. She lays everything out in front of him. She isn't asking for much. Just for them to stop tearing each other apart, for their sons to grow up in a home that isn't filled with resentment. And for a brief moment, Charles seems to agree. They may be failing as a couple, but they both love their children, and that's the one thing they'll always have in common. But when Diana shifts the conversation to what she needs, love, care, and affection, Charles completely shuts down. He won't even touch her. And from this point in the show, that detail becomes even more noticeable. Every time Diana tries to be romantic or even physically affectionate, Charles reacts with discomfort, even disgust. And it's not because he's wrestling with his feelings. It's because in his mind, Diana was never really his wife. She's more like a coworker, someone he was paired with for a job that was given to him at birth. And if you look at it that way, it makes sense. Of course he recoils from her touch. To him, she's overstepping a boundary that usually doesn't even exist in a marriage to begin with. But Diana didn't marry for duty. She thought this was a love story, that she was stepping into a fairy tale. And now she's realizing in real time that her husband doesn't just not love her, he doesn't even see her the way she sees him. But what's striking about this moment is that she isn't angry. She isn't bitter. She's just sad. This is her breaking point. The moment when she finally understands that no matter what she does, no matter how much she gives, Charles will never love her back. But she doesn't stay in this sadness forever. This is also a turning point, because once she accepts that truth, she can finally start figuring out what she's going to do about it. I Miss You Most on Sundays. I Miss You Most on Sundays is one of the most striking songs in Diana because it adds depth to Charles and Camilla, characters who could have easily been painted as outright villains. Throughout the musical, they are unquestionably the antagonists. Whether through their words, their actions, or their sheer presence, they are the source of Diana's suffering. And yet, this song reminds us that their cruelty is not rooted in malice. They do not set out to hurt Diana, even though they do. This raises an interesting question. What actually makes someone a villain? Do they have to be evil, or is it enough that they cause harm? If Diana were a purely fictional story, Charles and Camilla would fit neatly into the role of villains. They block Diana's path to happiness, and at times they are openly cruel to her. But this song complicates that idea. I Miss You Most on Sundays is the only true love song in the musical. It is grand, heartfelt, and deeply emotional. The moment that stands out the most is when Camilla rushes into Charles's arms, her voice swelling with love and longing. If the story were told from their perspective, this would be the moment where everything clicks. the moment where the audience roots for them to be together. It's the kind of classic, sweeping love story moment that belongs in epic romances. But that's what makes this number so fascinating. It is a love song, but it is also the song that most clearly defines Charles and Camilla as villains. It shows that they're not just an obstacle to Diana's happiness, they're an obstacle because of their own love for each other. Their love is real, but because of it, they continuously hurt Diana. And they choose over and over again to prioritize their love above all else, no matter the consequences. It's easy to dismiss villains when they are selfish or cruel for the sake of it, but what happens when a villain is motivated by love? Charles and Camilla's actions may be unforgivable in the context of Diana's story, but I Missed You Most on Sundays reminds us that their love is not a lie. It may make them villains, but it does not make them evil.
Pretty Pretty Girl.
Pretty Pretty Girl is my favorite song in Diana, and honestly, it's because it's an absolute bop. I always listen to it on my walks when I've put together a particularly fashionable outfit, and it always makes me feel incredible. That ties directly into what the song represents within the musical. This is the moment where Diana steps into her own power. As the Act 1 finale, it marks her decision to stop being passive and start fighting for herself. What makes this song especially interesting is that, at this point, Diana is no longer fighting for her marriage. Not entirely. As I Love You was her moment of realization that Charles will probably never truly love her, and while she will continue trying to reclaim their relationship for a while longer, Pretty Pretty Girl shifts her focus. Instead of fighting for Charles's love, she begins fighting for something else. Her place in the world. Diana didn't marry for publicity, she married for love. But now that love is no longer an option, she chooses to embrace the power that comes with being in the public eye. If Charles won't love her for who she is, she'll make sure the entire nation does. This song also marks the first time we see Diana strategically using the press to her advantage. The media, and even Charles and Camilla, have spent so long treating her as simple-minded, but Pretty Pretty Girl proves them wrong. She knows exactly what she's doing, crafting an image that allows her to push back while still appearing poised and elegant. This is where she realizes that she doesn't need Charles's approval to be happy. Why would she? Even when she does everything he asks, it's still not enough for him. So instead of chasing his validation, she turns to the people, the ones who are willing to love her back. Although Diana will continue fighting for her marriage beyond this point, this is where she starts fighting for herself. This moment is the birth of the legacy that will define her boldness, her style, her compassion, and her willingness to defy royal tradition. By breaking the rules, she captures the public's heart in a way that no royal has before. If Charles refuses to love her, she'll make sure the people do. She will give them everything they want and more. She will become the people's princess. Conclusion. I know I originally said I wanted to keep real people out of this, but I do want to draw attention to something the real Princess Diana once said in an interview. I'd like to be a queen of people's hearts. I'm not going to try and analyze the thoughts and feelings of the real Princess Diana, but I do want to apply this quote to the fictionalized version of her in Diana the Musical. Diana wanted to be loved. She thought she had found love with Charles only to realize she had been deceived. She had all this love to give and no one to receive it. So she gave it to the people, the ones who could actually love her in return. Diana's relationship with the public was one of adoration, and I honestly believe that, even in reality, that love was mutual. She wouldn't be queen, but she would be a queen of people's hearts. This leads me to my personal interpretation of love. It's like energy. It cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be shifted, transferred, and changed. Love is a beautiful, warm, exhilarating force, but most importantly, it's a powerful tool. And what makes Diana the Musical's version of Diana so wonderfully dangerous is that she understands how to wield it. She knows how to channel love, using it to bring an entire nation to her side to make them love her as much as she loves them. Diana's legacy is built on love. The love people had for her, the love she had for them. She gave so much, and in return, the world remembers her as a beautiful, strong, powerful woman. Diana the Musical is a story about the right way to use love as a tool. It works best when it's mutual. Diana and Charles did not share a mutual love, so she turned to the people instead, and they loved her enough to make her immortal in history. She didn't need a crown to be their queen. She was the queen of people's hearts. Because love is powerful. It can build legacies, but it can also destroy people when used incorrectly. Real love, enough of it, can move mountains. Diana the Musical feels almost like a Barbara Cartland novel in that way. It makes you believe that love can overcome all obstacles. That's the mindset I want to have. I want to believe in this version of love, even if it's a little naive. Well, that was certainly an endurance run. I really hope that I got my points across succinctly and clearly, even though I kind of stumbled over the words, even though I wrote out a script. But I really hope that, not that I've changed anyone's minds, I just hope that I haven't, maybe offended anyone. I just really like this musical, and I wanted to share why I liked it. I just think that it did have some thought put into it. And I believe that even that little bit of thought is what makes it so good. So maybe this will change someone's mind. Who knows? But either way, I'm really happy that anyone watched this. And if you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching. And be polite to someone today. I am currently recording the voiceover for this, and oh boy, even with a script, this is such an endurance run.